And let's read this quote together, Matthew 15:8. I think it's on the screen. This people honors me with their lips, but their what? But their heart is far from me. Therefore, in vain do they worship me, teaching as doctrines the commandments of men. So worship is about honoring God. Worship, that's an aspect of worship, but Jesus is saying you can say the right things, you can sing the right songs, you can have the right stuff, all the traditions can be in place, but if your heart is not engaged, your worship is empty. And that scares me to death. That we could meet in here and have a lot of people and awesome music and people are singing loud and the heart isn't engaged. And God, our Heavenly Father, looks at this kind of assembly, if that's the case, and He says, you're wasting your time. It's empty. It doesn't mean anything. And so everything we're doing in a worship context like this is to engage your heart. The reason I preach the way I preach, all sweaty and stuff like this, is because I'm trying to stir your heart. I want you excited. I want your heart stirred. I want you to love Jesus. As Mike turns on the AC. Bless you, brother. I don't want this to be an informational lecture, data from this mind to that mind. Thank you very much. I want your heart stirred. The reason we sing the songs that we sing, I know there's a generational divide between our church, and this generation likes this music, this other generation likes this music. Why do we have two different styles of music? So that we can stir the affections of your heart. Because you resonate with this kind of music and you don't necessarily resonate with this other kind of music. And it's not for the sake of the music. It's not about the style or tradition. It's about what's happening in your heart. And we want you stirred, your affection stirred. We want the truth of Christ. Worship is about spirit and truth. So we want the truth of who God is, the truth of who Christ is. We want that truth to shine. We want it to be beautiful. We want you to adore it. And that happens when you worship. That's why we do everything we do. As a church. That's why we exist. That's the purpose. There's different hows. The hows are different, but the main thing behind it is loving Christ with all of your heart. It's about the internal and not the external. And let me tell you, if those things are in place, then these worship style stuff, it's largely irrelevant. It's a tool. It's something that you leverage for a greater end. You get churches, they get into these worship wars. You ever heard about worship wars? One side likes this style of music, the other side likes this style of music, and usually those churches aren't large enough where they can have two different styles. And so they have a war. What's behind the war? What's the hidden assumption? What's the false assumption? It's the exact thing that this woman had, that worship is more about the traditions. It's more about the style. And Jesus is saying, look, the styles are leveraged for the sake of loving me. And if you could gather around this larger theological vision of worship, then the divisions that take place in church life would not be nearly as severe because you've got agreement on what worship really is. Do you see that? Worship is about Jesus. It's not about